All right, so my name is Karilyn, and I work for the Attorney General's office. It's made up of a whole bunch of different bureaus, and all of the bureaus have, different responsibilities, different legislative things that they do. And the bureau that I'm a part of is the High Tech Crimes Bureau, and within the bureau, we have what's called the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. So every state has one, well, most states have one. And within those states, they have their own, it's a federal funding, they get federal funding. So all the states kind of run their ICAC task force a little bit differently. Different people have different responsibilities and different duties, but the main goal of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is to see to it that children are safe, and we handle cases that have to do with anything that starts online or some kind of crime that is happening with kids that begins online, or there's evidence online of that crime. So my role in that is research, education, public outreach, and prevention. So some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight might be a little bit disheartening, and I'm not trying to scare anybody. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh my gosh, this world is horrible. But I do think that it's really important that we're educated on things, and the more we know, the more we can prevent them from happening. So the biggest group of cases that our office deals with, unfortunately, is child pornography cases. We deal with all kinds of different things, again, that have evidence online involving children, but the biggest bulk of cases are child pornography cases. Also online enticement, child sex trafficking, child molestation, and cyberbullying. We also work hand in hand with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They get cyber tips where they investigate certain things that are reported to them that happen online, and then if it's in Illinois, they send it to us, and then we take care of it from there. And then depending on which jurisdiction needs to take care of that case, then we farm it out to the proper jurisdiction. So typically the child pornography cases that we see have a lot of patterns and trends. Usually when we do see this type of imagery online and things that are being posted online, a lot of people don't know that it's illegal to just have it. So sometimes we'll see, especially right now, there tends to be a strange pattern of young people that are interested in this kind of material. Young people, when I say young people, I mean people that are in their late teens, early 20s. So a lot of cases have involved people in their early 20s having child pornography, and lots of it, unfortunately, on their computers. And so we'll hear kind of the same thing, well, I just have it, somebody just gave it to me. So I didn't do anything, I didn't touch a child, I didn't harm a child, I'm not the abuser, I just saw it. That's illegal, because sometimes people will think, well, they didn't, physically touch the child. But if you're downloading this stuff and you have it, it's creating a demand for it. People want it then, which means more kids are getting abused because more content is being created. So typically it's not always males, but the larger portion of the offenders in these crimes are males. Sometimes it's difficult to tell the age of a child in some of the imagery that we get, trying to determine if it is a child or not, because sometimes, especially if it has something to do with maybe sex trafficking or some kind of exchange online, sometimes the kids are made to look much older than they are, so sometimes we have a hard time identifying if we receive tips with photos, if it even is a child or not, but the investigation will usually continue on, of course. And typically a trusted person. Not always a trusted person, but in many cases, it unfortunately will be the parents, or sometimes a trusted member of the community, or someone in the family that's creating this kind of content and putting it out there. Does anybody know why I would have a picture up here of a box of trading cards? Anybody? Yes?
Enticement.
Yes, one of the things, the patterns that we see with people that trade child pornography is it's common to trade it as if it's like a baseball card. So you'll see people that will say, I want they have very specific demands. I want a 6-year-old child. I want a picture of a 6-year-old in this kind of position with this on or off. And they ask other people for that, and then they want that in exchange. So there's this strange kind of trading that goes on in these groups of people. And it's usually not for money, it's not for a profit, it's just to trade to get other photos. They want an accumulation of photos. And oftentimes we see that they'll store them on their computers in little files. So you'll have something like, or a series is what we usually call it. So you'll see something, when they collect the evidence on the computers of some of these people, you'll have multiple folders with names on it. So they'll try to collect as many pictures as they can of certain children and store them in there. So it's almost done as a collection. It's really sad to see. But again, I don't want everybody to be upset, but we do need to know that this is something that is in high demand out there. I teach sociology classes to college students, and this is something that I've been interested in social problems for a long time and just wanting to work in communities to try to reduce the problems. And I always knew that this was an issue, but I never really knew the extent of the issue until I got this job. It's just something that we should all just be aware of and be mindful of. So we're going to kind of get back to that, but moving on, I want to talk about digital readiness. So a lot of parents will ask the question is, when is a good time to allow my child to have their own smartphone or their own tablet, or to allow them to get online? And there really isn't a golden number. So sometimes people are like, oh, I thought they were going to tell us the age. When is a great time for this? There really isn't a golden age. It really just depends on your child. You kind of have to just think about what are their capacities for handling stress, because once they get online and once they have their own devices, there's going to be a whole new group of stressors that come into their lives. Whether it be cyberbullying, whether it be, just communicating with people they've never met before, because now, they're kind of at the hands of all these strangers. Not all of them are bad, but they're going to be communicating with people that they don't know. They're going to be receiving feedback on things like their looks, what they have, what they do, whatever they post in their pictures, because social media is all commentary and feedback, right? So a lot of kids have a lot of trouble with that feedback or aren't ready for it right away. So we've kind of gone from this to this over the past few generations. And there's just some kind of interesting things about the way that our socialization is changing. So obviously we can do things online, we can do, social media and do all kinds of stuff with our tablets. It doesn't mean that we're going to be socially awkward people just because we like to do things online. But something that we do need to take into consideration is the fact that the younger generations, they spend a lot more time online than all of us. They have a much longer digital footprint than we do. So if we Google ourselves, we're going to probably find some stuff online. But when our kids get much older and they Google themselves, or their employers, possible employers, or possible colleges start to Google them, they're going to find a much longer track record of things that they've been posting, because they've been on for a lot longer. Their online life starts when they're much younger than most of ours. So just kind of thinking about the socialization process and how it's changed, we have, and when I say we, I'm talking about people that are not young kids, so adults. We have a lot more accumulated skills that we've learned in our interpersonal interactions. So things like just hanging out with people, just talking to people face to face, just making an actual phone call. It's not that kids today don't do that, but they do it a lot less because they do most of their socializing online. Most of it is through social media. Even their conception of who friends are is a little bit different, because they think that all their 1,000 friends are their friends. A lot of them don't make that distinction of people that you know and trust and have interacted with, and that distinction between those people and then people that they just met online and had a couple conversations with. So just really emphasizing to the kids that they need that time to have interpersonal interactions with other human beings. And I was talking about this with kids one day, and I had one little boy raise his hand, and he's like, well, when you're online, it is a human being that you're talking to. True, it is. But you're not having that learning experience to pick up on facial expressions, pick up on body language, the things that we're learning when we are face-to-face and with other human beings. So I really do think, and I don't have scientific data to prove this, but I do think it's something that should be researched in terms of, how the younger generations have a lot less of that interpersonal interaction, and how that might impact all kinds of things like relationship skills, social skills, levels of anxiety, social anxiety, things like that. So just really encouraging the kids to put down the devices once in a while and just go outside and play, or go talk to someone, or actually make a phone call and have an actual conversation instead of just, online all the time. We like to use these, so and sometimes when I say we, I'm talking about our office and other people that are spending some time researching some of these things. But we like to suggest the social and emotional learning perspective. This is something that's pretty prevalent in social work and working with children, and just kind of going through some of these different ideas about capacities, psychological capacity, emotional capacity of children. And it would take probably an entire session just to talk about what is the social emotional learning perspective and how all of that works. But on our website, which I'll give you the website at the end, we have a lot of resources that can kind of give you a list. We have one list of questions where it's really good to use it as a guide to make a decision on how much time your child can spend online. if they can have their own device yet. We've got some parents that, you know, will buy their kids their own devices when they're like 3 years old, and then some are waiting till much later. So it really just kind of depends on what is their emotional and social capacity to kind of deal with some of the things that are going to be brought on by being so exposed on social media. This is a campaign that's online. It's called Wait Till 8th. There's a pledge on there. It's just a suggestion. It's not necessarily, we're not necessarily endorsing it from our office, but we just think it's kind of a neat idea of waiting until 8th grade. How many of your kids here are below 8th grade and have their own devices? Okay. So yeah, a lot of kids, and it's really, I think there's a lot of pressure for parents too, because sometimes parents want to wait a little bit longer. They don't want to give them their own stuff just yet, but when all the other kids have it, it's hard because then you don't want your child to feel like they're missing out on something. And you don't want them to be behind when it comes to technology, because they're growing up in a world of technology and they need to know how to use it to survive, you know. All right, so this is just a little funny video that I like to play.
Social networking is completely out of control these days, but do the things we do online make sense in real life? Let's take to the streets and find out.
Ma'am, hi. I just want to let you know that I'm following you, like just giving you an alert.
Okay.
You don't have to do anything, just know it and enjoy it. Jenna Kingsley is now following you. Just like do whatever and I'll just watch. Is that creepy? You want to poke me back? Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, this is weird though. I don't even know you.
I know, but that's what you do, right? Tom O'Donnell started working at McGuire Law Firm. Congratulate Tom, guys. Be team players. You guys are not supportive. I want to endorse you for your coffee making skills.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
So easy, I don't even know what it means, but it's the thing to do. Do you think you're going to endorse me too? Because I'm pretty good at it.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Hi guys. I was wondering if you would like accept my friendship request.
Friendship what?
He looks really important with like the whole button down. Do you want to be connected?
Do you want to be connected? How do you want to be connected?
I just want to let you know that 12 people have viewed you.
I'm sorry?
12 people have viewed you on the subway.
What does that mean?
I don't know, you must be really important. They're like viewing you. That guy chose to remain anonymous. 7 people have viewed you on the subway. I have just checked into Grand Central Station. What's your name?
Andrew?
Jenna and Andrew have just checked into Grand Central Station with about 452 other people. I am getting so many views right now. I am. Oh my God, man, that's so cute. I have to share this with everybody. Do you want to comment on how cute this is?
This is cute.
I like your comment. Excuse me, sir. Can you introduce me to that guy that's sitting next to you?
This guy?
You're like our 1-degree connection.
Okay.
So if you could introduce me.
All right, and your name is?
Jenna.
Excuse me? Hey, my friend over here, Jenna, she'd like me to introduce you to her. So,
Hey,
Great.
I'm Jenna. I mean, we had him in common, so I figured I should meet you. And now we're all connected.
So I like showing that because I think it's kind of interesting to try to apply social media behaviors in the physical, or I hate saying the real world, because being online is also part of the real world, but in the physical world where we're interacting. And I talk to kids a lot about this, and I'll ask them things about how when the location settings are on for anyone to see, I ask them, would you put your picture all over town? Would you spread that picture all over the state or all over the country with your address on there? And they're all like, no way, that would be crazy. And then when I say, well, is your location settings on Snapchat? And they're like, yeah. And so that's why I'm trying to kind of like let them know that sometimes those things that we think are very normal or we think are, you know, okay to do on social media, if we try to apply that to real life, we know that it would be scary or it would be dangerous for us. So when I ask all the kids, so I go around to schools and talk to them, and when I ask them about some of the apps that they're on, the biggest ones, other than a lot of the gaming apps like Steam and Discord, TikTok is a huge one. Kik is actually gone now. I think they sold it to another company though, so it'll be springing right back up. But YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok are the biggest. TikTok is not up there anymore, but Facebook, a lot of kids are not on Facebook anymore. They say it's the place for old people. But one thing to know is that, strangely, a lot of kids won't be on Facebook, but they'll use the Facebook Messenger to communicate. And about 90% of the reports that missing and exploited children get, the cyber tips that they get to investigate, all have evidence that are conversations and pictures that are shared between an adult that's looking to, groom a child or starting to talk to a child. They're all coming from Facebook Messenger. So I usually try to tell the kids to download something else. The only thing though is, even if we say one app is a worse place than another app, people just shift over and move to it. So all of them really have the ability to be a dangerous place, so none of them are really safer than others, but definitely knowing that Facebook Messenger gets a lot of activity from people that are trading child pornography and for child predators. Also, so if your kids have Snapchat, something to think about is, again, the ghost mode, telling the kids to put it in ghost mode. Sometimes, do any of you use Snapchat on your own? Anybody? Just a few, not too many. I would definitely suggest, even though you probably don't want to use it or just don't want to get involved in it, if your kids are using it, download it just so you know what the functionality is, just kind of get used to how it works, so you have an idea of what your kids are also doing and maybe some of the risks that they're exposed to. So if you have Snapchat, and I going to the schools, I ask the kids, how many of you are on Snapchat? Everybody raises their hand. And then when I ask them, how many of you are on ghost mode? Nobody raises their hand. And ghost mode is where it turns off the location settings. So if it's not on ghost mode, you can just click on someone's little avatar and zoom right in on it, and you can see the exact point in the world where they are. And it's not just a general map, it zooms right into it. You can see your house on it. So that's pretty dangerous, because even if you don't have Snapchat, so this is another thing that we see a lot, is people that are looking to harm a child, that have bad intentions, that are dangerous for kids. Sometimes they'll just go right on there and look around to see, where can I find kids that are in my neighborhood that are hanging out outside. So if anybody wants to try this, if you pull out your phone right now, if you have it handy, you don't have to pull it out if it's in a bag or something, but if you have it handy, if you don't have Snapchat, nobody needs to have it for this. You just type in map.snapchat.com. And I don't have a way to connect, otherwise I would do this on here with you. But give it a try. Just go to map.snapchat.com. And when you're on the site, it should have a search bar right on the top. And you could just type in the name of your town, or you can type in your zip code, and you'll see a map will appear. And you'll see little blue areas shining on that map. If you click on any of those, you'll see videos that people are publicly snapping. So videos that people are making and putting out there. Sometimes, and I went to an investigative training one night, and afterwards I went back to the hotel, and I just had learned about it, and I was looking at it, and I was just looking at all the snaps that people were making right around the hotel in just a couple mile radius, and I saw one that had somebody waving around a gun yelling homicide. So just so everyone's aware that you can kind of see what people are putting out there, and if your kids have their accounts on public, and they're maybe just putting something fun and has no intention of anything bad, but just playing outside, that is an open door for somebody that's looking for children to just find where they are, because it is the exact points on the map where they are. And we have had some situations. We had one school where these two boys didn't like this other boy, and he had posted a video of himself hanging out at the park, just kind of being silly, posted it up there. The other two boys saw his location because they saw his Snapchat video, and they found him at the park, and they beat him up pretty badly. I think this was a gang-related issue. I'm not saying that this happens in every town, but it's just a really good thing to talk to your kids. If they have Snapchat, tell them to keep it on ghost mode, or use the selection where you can choose who can see your location. Because sometimes parents are like, well, I want my children, I want to see where they're at. So if you're connecting with them through Snapchat, you might want the location to be on. So just tell the kids, or take a look at their phone, take a look at the settings, and do it where you can select who's able to see their location, because you do have that option on there. Another thing, YouTube. A lot of kids will have their own YouTube channels. A lot of them want to get popular, they want to get famous online, they want to be celebrities online, so they're doing all kinds of crazy YouTube videos of their own. And some of them are pretty creative and really funny, and it's fun for them, it's a fun activity. The only thing is, a lot of times they're not putting these things on public, and they don't always know who's viewing them. So the kids will tend to think that if somebody subscribes to my channel, or if somebody leaves a comment, or if somebody clicks like, then I know who's seeing me. I know how many people are seeing me, I know who's watching my videos. But many people, you know, we watch videos on YouTube and we don't leave a comment, we just go on to the next one. So there was one case where there was a young girl, she was in 8th grade, and she had a YouTube video, or a YouTube channel of her own, where she made crafting tutorials. She did art stuff, all kinds of crafting, and one day she decided to make a video at school. So normally it was crafting and artsy, creative stuff, and then one day she was at school just kind of making jokes, and she had her friend filming her, and she wasn't really thinking about the background, because a lot of kids are not going to be thinking, what's in the background of my video? But there was a poster right behind her on the wall for an upcoming play at their school, and it had the name of the school on there. And she posted it on her YouTube channel. She had no idea, for the past year, there was an older man who was in his 50s who had been watching all of her videos. He never made himself known. He didn't click like, he didn't subscribe, he never left a comment, so she never even knew that this older man existed, never knew she had this fan that had been watching all of her stuff. And he actually went to her school, because all he had to do, right now that he sees that poster in the background, he just Googled the name of her school. And he actually sat outside of her school looking for her. And luckily, when he started to approach her, a teacher had noticed that it wasn't someone that is normally there. They noticed some suspicious activity, getting out of the car, things like that. So they went up and asked the student, do you know this man? And she said, no, I don't know who this is. And it somehow came out later through questioning. They called the police, and the police came. But he had talked about how he was interested in her, wanted to hang out with her, wanted to be her friend because he loved her YouTube videos, and just thought that they would be the greatest of friends. An 8th grader and a man in his 50s. So I try to really emphasize with the kids to put those videos on private. The thing about it is they don't want to, because they want those friends and followers, they want the subscribers, they want the comments. That's important to them. But they don't always realize how risky it is for them. So if they do have a YouTube channel and you're pretty proactive with them, I would say put those videos on private. You can't make the channels private anymore. YouTube has changed that, where now the full channel cannot be on private, but you can privatize individual videos. So you can go into the settings of their channel, you probably have to get their password or sit down and talk to them about it. Go into their channel and then individually put those videos on private. So something else that's kind of popular now among the kids is photo vault apps. Has anybody heard of these before? Photo vaults. So this is an app where you can store photos, and the intention of it is to have additional privacy, but kids are using it in kind of a different way. So a lot of times, especially if they're very pressured, we see it a little bit more with the teens, being pressured to create explicit photos, especially because teens are communicating through text so often that a lot of times in their relationships, since it becomes more mobile and they spend more time texting each other back and forth than actually hanging out back and forth, they think that it's a very normal and very acceptable thing for them to be trading sexy photos with each other, explicit photos, because they think that it's a sign of affection, they think that it's a sign of love, or they think that they're proving that they're comfortable with the other person, not realizing that what they're doing is they're trading child pornography. They're self-producing, and then they're trading it. So it is possession of child pornography, and then also distribution if they send it to someone else. So we always tell the kids, and you might also want to let your kids know, if they ever receive a photo from somebody that is inappropriate, if it's of a child and it's explicit in nature, tell them not to send it to their friends, because a lot of times that's the first thing they want to do. They see it and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got this picture. I want to send this to all my friends so then they can laugh about it. But what they're doing, at least in terms of the law, is when they're spreading that around, that's considered distribution of child pornography if the person in the photo is under the age of 18. So a lot of times kids will hide these photos, or they'll just store them because they want to. And I'm not saying every kid is taking these photos, but especially in high school, we ask all the kids, how many of you have ever received a naked picture of somebody without even wanting it? And kids as young as 4th grade are raising their hands. And we ask, the teens, and almost all of them are raising their hands. We ask how many of you have sent one, and they raise their hands. So it's kind of surprising, but at the same time, it's not surprising, because to them it's just a normal way of showing affection, or it's a normal way of trying to build up their own confidence. So they'll store these pictures in these photo vault apps. So a lot of times it looks like a calculator. So if you look at your child's phone, just take a quick look at it. If you notice there's a few calculators, one of them might not actually be a calculator. So what it is it's an app, you type in a code, and then it opens up to a whole other photo full of folders. So people can hide things in this app. There was an app called Poof, and a lot of young kids were using this to hide apps from their parents. So if you had rules about which apps they were allowed to use and which ones they couldn't use, they would take this app called Poof, and then what it does is it allows you to select any apps that your parents don't want you to use, and you plug them in, and then what happens is if your parents are like, I'm taking your device away, and they try to take it, with one touch on the app icon, it makes all of those apps disappear, all the apps that they've selected. So it actually is shut down. It was causing a lot of problems, so they shut it down. The only thing though is if anybody downloaded that app before it got shut down, it still works. It still functions, kids are still using it. So just kind of things to look out for. I'm not trying to make everybody act like Big Brother with their kids or something, but it's a good thing to check out the phone, see what they have on there, and also keep up with a lot of the things that they're using. Try to keep up with the technology, learn about the apps. If they're talking about Snapchat a lot, just download Snapchat. Doesn't mean that you have to use it, but just get it so you can learn about all the functions of it and see how they're using it, or even just to befriend them. A lot of parents ask about YouTube Kids. It's not so much that it isn't, I know it says, is it safe, sounds a little bit sensationalized. It's not so much that it's unsafe, but there's inappropriate content that we find a lot on there. So some of the things that happen are people will splice the content where they'll create some kind of inappropriate video that's not appropriate for kids, sometimes pornographic, and you'll see about 10 minutes of the cartoon, and then in the middle, all of a sudden some other video will pop on, and then it will go back and feed back into the cartoon. And sometimes it's scary, it's inappropriate for kids, and you don't know why people do these things, but unfortunately they do. So I would definitely suggest checking out some of the things that they like to watch, especially for the little toddlers. Preview some of those channels that they watch and the cartoons that they watch. Also, the search words is an issue when people are setting up. So if you post a video of your own, you can choose the search words that you want so people will find it. Sometimes people will post videos that are adult content, definitely not for kids. Doesn't necessarily mean it's pornographic or violent, but just something that's not appropriate for a child. And sometimes they'll still choose search words that are associated with kids' videos because they want more people to click on it. They want kids to click on these because then it gives them more clicks, which gives them more ability to possibly get advertisers and get money. So you could have somebody posting something that is completely adult content, not made for the eyes of children, and in their search words that they're choosing, they'll pick something like kid songs or fun play day or something like that. So then when you go along and type in, when kids go along to type in those things, sometimes those other videos get mixed in. So you want to just kind of keep an eye out for those. I would definitely suggest, and I know this takes a lot of time, sometimes the parents are like, I don't have the time for this, but it's really important and it's going to help them in terms of what they're exposed to. If you take a little bit of time and preview the things that they like to watch, even creating a playlist. So instead of just letting them, kind of go free range on YouTube, choose some playlist, make a playlist with things that you've already previewed or that you know have been previewed and plug them in there and then let them use that playlist. Or you can download, so that way you have files for them to view, so that way it won't go stream into another video. Or I would say just go with the old-fashioned TV. Just use TV, because if they're watching Nickelodeon or something like that, it's not going to stream into another video that has nothing to do with kid stuff. And that tends to be a thing. YouTube is trying to make it safer. They've got some things going on right now where they're trying to avoid some of these problems that they're finding. But just to be, just to be mindful of, things to be mindful of. So online enticement, this is the use of the internet to persuade, coerce, or entice a minor to engage in sexual activity. This is kind of something that has been around since the beginning of chat rooms. Since AOL Instant Messenger, this problem has persisted. There's something kind of bigger, newer, or I shouldn't say bigger, but there's a growing trend. And to call a crime a trend is kind of weird to say that it's trendy, but what we're seeing a lot of cases of is not online enticement, but something that we refer to as sextortion. I'm gonna skip through some of these, sorry. Sextortion is where the enticement begins and an older person pretends that they're the same age as the child, talks to them for a while, develops a friendship, a good bond, and then once they get the respect of that child and they get their trust, they'll ask them for a sexting picture. So they'll ask them for something inappropriate. They'll say something like, hey, we've been talking for a really long time, why don't we trade photos with each other? Let's trade naked pictures, we don't have to tell our parents. And you would think that a lot of kids would say, no way, I'm not gonna do that. But we have a lot of cases like this. There's so many that our forensics guys can't even keep up with the cases and the evidence that they have to go through. So what's happening is the kids will be like, okay, I'll do it, and then they'll send a photo of themselves, not realizing that they've just distributed child pornography because they've made it of themselves. And then once that person gets it, then that person reveals themselves and says, or they don't always reveal who they are or how old they are, but then they'll use that as blackmail against the child. They'll say something like, I'm going to send this to your school, or I'm going to send this to your parents, or I'm going to send this to all of your teachers if you don't send me another one. And little kids, they don't know. Even teens get wrapped up in it. They don't know. And they think that the person is telling them the truth because they've already created a trust with that child. So then once they get that picture, they use it as blackmail, and then they're asking for more. And we've seen some cases where these people will ask not just for more pictures, but they'll also ask for videos. And in some cases, we've even seen where these people will ask the kids to go and take pictures or make videos of their younger siblings. So we definitely want to make sure that we're paying really close attention to who the kids are talking to. Try to limit the social media, especially if they're really young, because this is a big danger that kids are exposed to. And sometimes they will ask for things like credit card numbers, things like that, or they'll say, go get your parents' credit card, or go get your mom's purse. I want your parents' credit card number. And if you don't do it, I'm going to show this picture to everybody. And they really don't want that embarrassment. Another thing also is they don't want to tell their parents because they're afraid that the device will get taken away from them. So something that we typically suggest is trying to let your child know that if somebody is ever harassing them or if they're in danger, let them know you're not going to take their device away, because that's the first thing that they think. They think, oh my gosh, this guy's creeping me out, but I don't want to tell my parents because I know they're going to take away my phone, or I know they're going to take away my tablet. And to them, that's like the worst thing you can do. Most kids, when we ask, we do a lot of different surveys, and most kids would rather be grounded from any other thing besides having their phone or their tablets or their devices taken away from them. So just letting them know that you won't take it away if they'll come to you about something can really open the door for them to actually let you know if they're in some kind of danger or if somebody's been bothering them or harassing them online. So some warning signs to know if somebody's been talking to your child and kind of leading up into that direction. If your child starts talking about things that they don't typically talk about, that have some kind of adult content as part of it. So if they're talking about adult things that you don't normally hear them mentioning, or if they're asking you questions that they don't typically ask that are just not the type of content that their friends are talking about, or something that you're not talking about in the home, that might be a sign that somebody is prompting them to have these questions. So somebody might be bringing up things that are not appropriate for them online. So if you hear them start to kind of talk about things that they don't normally talk about, things that are adult in nature, that might be a sign that somebody has been putting those things in their head, talking to them online about it. And that is something that we typically see in grooming cases where someone's grooming them to meet or grooming them for some purpose. Also sex trafficking and things like that. We see some of that. So some of the warning signs also, they're asking the kids not to tell their parents of the friendship. So if your child is on their device a lot and they're hiding it from you when you come into the room, or they're closing their laptop pretty quickly when you come into the room, typically those would be signs that they're talking to someone that maybe they shouldn't be, or they're just looking at content that they shouldn't be looking at. Or if they're not spending a lot of time in the common areas of the household and maybe going into their room a lot with their devices, maybe more often than usual, there might be somebody that's speaking to them that's like, hey, go in your room, close the door, let's talk now. So sometimes that happens also. And I ask the kids a lot, how many of you have ever had somebody that maybe you meet in a game, or maybe that you meet online in Snapchat or Instagram or something like that, and then they've asked you to go into another app to communicate? And all of them raise their hand, which really makes me concerned. Because typically if somebody's asking them to move to another location to talk, there's usually a reason for that. If they don't want to continue the conversation in Snapchat, or they don't want to continue the conversation on Facebook Messenger or something like that, and they want to move them to another location, that's a red flag. And I know it's difficult for you to see that that's happening, but it's something to definitely talk to your kids about. Let them know if somebody says, hey, how about we download the app WhatsApp? Has anyone ever heard of that one, WhatsApp? Yeah, so we see that one tends to be, people will say, hey, download WhatsApp, I want to talk to you there. Or they want to talk to them on Snapchat and move them to a different place. So usually that's a sign, and we let the kids know that that's a sign of somebody that might be trying to manipulate you, somebody that's up to no good, and there's a reason that they want you to move your location when speaking, because they're trying to conceal their identity in some way, or they don't want other people knowing about it. So some of the other suggestions up here, Again, a lot of these people are trying to ask for gift cards, and they're trying to ask for credit card numbers. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll ask the kids, even again for photos, and they'll say, I'll give you a gift card code. So you can use this gift card code for anything you want. You can buy something cool online, but I want this from you instead. Or they'll say, if you send me whatever it is that they want, I'll give you a gaming code so you can play more games. And kids right away think, that would be great, cool, I can get stuff. So sometimes they fall into that trap not even knowing. So just letting them know that if somebody's offering you gift card codes, one, it could just be a scam, but two, if they're offering you something like that that costs money, they're usually up to no good. They're not just gonna give them something for no reason. And sometimes they'll start to make these offers before they ask for something. So if they do have a legitimate gift card code or they do have a legitimate gaming code, they might give it to the child that they've been speaking to, and then the child already knows, okay, cool, it worked. I was able to use this. I was able to play another game, or I was able to get something online. And then so the next time what they'll do is they'll say, I'll give you another gift card code. Do you want more? And the kid will say, yes, of course. And then they'll put their demand out there. They'll say something like, well, I want you to send me a picture of yourself without a lot of clothes on, something like that. And then it just escalates from there, and then the kids get trapped into it. They don't want to tell their parents about it. So definitely be mindful of these things. Cyberbullying is something that we're actually seeing going down, which is good news. A lot of schools have a lot of different initiatives to combat cyberbullying and to, make kids more empathetic and to talk to them about kindness and respect and things like that. And I think that they are having a pretty good outcome. Physical bullying is going up a little bit. Cyberbullying is going down. So we don't know what's going on with that, but something that is definitely being looked into. But some of the different things, when your kids have these different apps, social media, all kinds of different things online, when they're going to create a new app, you definitely want to check it out. And I know you don't always know what your kids are downloading, right? We don't always know. Kids are downloading stuff like crazy. They're using all kinds of apps. It's hard for us to even keep up with what apps the kids are using. So every time I go to a school, I have to, ask them, what are you guys using now? What's cool now? And sometimes something will be cool one week, and then next week no one's using it anymore. But if you get the chance, every once in a while, look over their phones, see what apps are on there. If you're not sure about it, just have a conversation. Just be willing to take the time to have that conversation. What do you do on this app? Who are your friends on this app? What kinds of things does the app allow you to do? And then, again, you can consider downloading it yourself and having it on your phone, just so you can mess around with it a little bit. When you get a couple minutes here or there, mess around with it, and then you can figure out just how it works. So that way you just know a little bit more about how they're using it, how they're using technology. Another thing too is when phones and devices do updates, so whether it be an automatic update or it's an update that you're putting in there that you want it to do, sometimes that will mess with the settings on there, so it might change some of the settings that you already have set up. So if your phone is doing an update, you might want to go back and look at the privacy settings. So for the kids, I always tell them to, if you had an update on your phone and you had certain things set to private, go back and check those things and see if any of them have been changed or altered in any way. So this is just some advice by the office, establishing household online agreement. So I know some schools will do this. In some families, we've talked to some families where they'll when they decide that they're gonna get their child their own phone or get them their own laptop when they're young, they'll say, okay, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna have a talk about technology, and we're gonna set some rules about what you're allowed to use, what you're not allowed to use, and draw up a contract, and then we both sign it, and then hang it on the fridge, something like that. That might, for older kids, some people might think that's a little corny, but it definitely helps to kind of set those limits, set the rules, and really lay the foundation of what they're allowed to use and what they're not allowed to use. Enabling the parental controls, obviously that's super important. When I do a lot of these parent nights, a lot of parents, that's the question that they want to know. They want to know, how do we set them up? Sometimes, it's difficult to find them or to find out how can you do it. The only problem with that is that would be an entire day's workshop because the apps have different settings on them, devices have different settings on them, sites have different settings, software programs have different settings. So it would be impossible for me to go through and show you every single parental control that you can set up on different devices. So I really like to just encourage parents to be the knowledge seeker. Take that time to look it up. Take a few minutes to see what are the settings on the apps that they're using, what are the settings on the phone itself. Do you use parental controls? Some families will get different software programs and really take the time to see what you can do to make sure that it's safer in terms of putting privacy things on there anything that's going to help. Sometimes even time limits, screen time limits, that's really important. Another thing that I would suggest is having the kids turn off their phones about an hour before bedtime, because when we're using our phones right before bed, sometimes it's so normal to us. Sometimes we've got so much to do. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I will lay in bed and do things on my phone. I'll be answering emails and things like that when I'm trying to go to sleep, and that just on the phone for too long. So something I would suggest definitely for the kids, just so they already get in the habit of it, take the phone away at least an hour, or take the tablet away at least an hour before bed, because it gives their brain time to wind down. Because sometimes what happens is it's not just that they're, usually we're not just watching a show or we're not just talking to one person. When we're on a tablet or on our phone, we're doing multiple things, right? We're texting somebody, maybe we're checking an email, maybe we're going into our Facebook or our Instagram, all of these different things. So we're keeping our brain kind of trained to not stay focused and not stay in one path of thinking. So synapses are firing all over the place, and actually just doing this over time is actually depleting a little bit of our attention, our ability to keep attention and keep focus. And we do wonder why we have so many kids that have attention deficit issues. I don't know, I can't give you any scientific data about that, but there have been some studies and research that have been done on how the brain is actually affected by being online so much and jumping from place to place, because we have to train our brain to multitask at a much higher level than what we normally would. So just taking the phone away at night and not letting them take it in their rooms at night. I ask a lot of kids at schools, how many of you are able to take your phone in your room when you go to bed with you? And a lot of them raise their hands. Not very many kids, or at least from what I've seen, they don't have a lot of rules about when they're allowed to. So I ask them, if you're online in the chat room at night, or you're playing a game really late at night and your parents are already in bed, a lot of your friends are already in bed, who do you think is online more? More kids or more adults? And they know it. They say it's mostly adults, so they end up gaming with older people, and they end up communicating with older people. And the people that are out there looking for kids, they know that. They know that kids that are online late at night, their parents probably are not paying attention, and their parents are probably in bed. And maybe they don't even know that their child is online. So just taking the phone away and just keeping it maybe in another room, not letting them take it to bed with them at night, I think is pretty important. Some of the things you might want to check out if you are considering using a parental control software program. There's a lot of different ones that are really good. Does anybody use any of the software programs? Not necessarily one that's up here, but anybody have any of the family programs or different parental controls? Okay, cool. So My Mobile Watchdog I think is a pretty good one. I also think Custodio is really good. You can see on your phone, so it kind of does a mirror imaging in some ways, where you can see the texts that come up that your child gets, and you can either deny or accept it, depending on how it's set up. Different programs are set up differently. You can also see the apps that they're going to download, and if you want to take that time to check it out, see what it is, see what types of age groups are using it, then you can deny it if you don't think it's appropriate for them. Also call blocking, call logging, locations, things like that. You can set all those things up on these. These are some good things to look for if you are considering using a parental control program. Call logging, call blocking, text logging. So again, so you can see the text, you see them before they see them. So even if somebody's sending them just really inappropriate things, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's a predator out there, but some of their friends, if they've been bullying them or somebody from school has been harassing them, you can see that text first and you can make sure that it doesn't even reach them. Also location tracking, sometimes parents want that turned on so they can see where their child is. I've heard some parents say, no, that's way too much, it's just too invasive and it's spying on the child. But really when they're young, we have to protect the kids because there are so many dangers out there for them, especially being online so often. There are a lot more risks that they're exposed to. So web monitoring, so you can see what they've been looking at and see if there's anything that maybe you might want to talk to them about or if there's something inappropriate that's coming up, and time limits. One of the things that we talk to the kids about pretty extensively is just knowing a trusted adult. A lot of them immediately, it's their parents, but sometimes, again, they don't want to tell their parents if something has gone wrong or if somebody's bothering them online because they're afraid that they're going to lose their devices. So talking to them about, if you don't want to tell me something, who would you like to tell? Who would be someone? Ask them who they would tell. So maybe say, oh, would you tell Auntie Karilyn? Or would you tell your teacher or something? So just talking to them about having a trusted adult in their mind that they would be comfortable talking to if it's not you. Hopefully it is, right? But sometimes, unfortunately, when we talk to the kids, that's the last person they wanted to tell when something happened, or when somebody was bothering them online, or if somebody asked them for, an inappropriate photo, their parent is the last person that they wanted to inform about that. So just having a conversation about who's the trusted adult, who can you turn to if not me. Our website, so right now it's called ebully411.com. We're changing that because it used to focus more on cyberbullying, and we're definitely trying to switch that up because we're not talking about cyberbullying as often. We're talking more about the cases that we see, so talking more about child pornography and sextortion, because this is what we're seeing a lot more of out there. So this is the bigger risk. So it's not ebully anymore, or it won't be soon. And 411, the kids have no idea what is 411 because kids don't use 411 anymore. So we're changing it, but it will redirect. So for right now, ebully411.com has a lot of resources. This page right here has links for all of these different things online where you can check out information about parental controls. So if you're not sure how to find the parental controls, you can just go to these, go to the link that it gives you online, you can just click on it, and it will give you some information on how to set those parental controls up, which takes a little bit of time off of your hands, so that's good. A copy of the agreement, and this says 2016, but we have one that says 2019. So just some different conversation starters, things to prompt up a dialogue between you and your child about, what's important when using technology, what things to look out for, what things to talk about, all of that. Also, if your child does come to you and they say, somebody really, was my friend, they convinced me to send a selfie of myself that is kind of inappropriate, and they let you know and you want that taken down, you can go to cybertipline.com, or you can go to missingkids.com also. It will direct you around the same place, and you can plug in, where is the content, and they have programs, and they can't always get everything down because it's hard. You don't know how many, if someone sent a bad photo or an inappropriate photo, you don't know how many people have screenshotted it or how many people have sent it, but there's really a lot of efforts out there to try to get this stuff down off of the internet, especially if it's a child, because that can really impact their future, and also it's child pornography. So they try to go through and they have systems where it matches up all the pixels, so that way they can try to scrub that image and try to find it in all these different places. So you can go there and report stuff, even cybertipline.com. If your child comes to you and says this person's been harassing me, or this person has been asking me for inappropriate things, if you go to cybertipline.com and report it, you can even tell your child, save a screenshot, save their screen name, and then block them. But now that you've had their screen name, and now that you've had a little bit of information, you can make a report. They can't always find the person, but they can definitely do a little digging and do some investigating. Missing and exploited children, they do that, and then, like I said, if it's something in Illinois, they'll send it to us, and then our people will also investigate. We've got some really great investigators, and we've got forensics people, and they're really, really, doing good work trying to safeguard kids. One other story that I wanted to tell you that I forgot about. There was a student in high school, and her boyfriend convinced her to send a nude photo to him, and after he had been asking her for a little while, she finally said, okay, I'll do it. So she sent it to him, and she sent it to her boyfriend, and then that boyfriend decided to send it to his best friend, and thinking, she thought, okay, he's the only person who's going to see it, he promised, and then he thought, I'm just going to send it to my one friend, nobody else will see it, and it just spread. And they had the police investigate it, and what ended up happening is they were able to track that picture being sent to 122 IP addresses. So 122 times this photo was sent across the school. And unfortunately, we do see a lot of schools that are having problems with this, trying to tackle it and trying to really let the kids know that this is not a good thing. It seems like it's so normal to them. But so all of those 122 students, they had to go to court, they got a ticket, they had to go to do community service, and they got a fine. So I do tell the kids about that story, and I say, do you think your parents would be happy if they got that call and they got a fine? And they're like, no. So it's just something to be mindful of, something to talk about. It's not to punish the parents, because sometimes the parents can be held liable. It all depends on the jurisdiction, it depends on the judge, it depends on the whole, a whole bunch of different things. But it's just stuff to be mindful of. So other places to go, if you've got real little kids and you want to show them some different things about online safety and just making good choices online, is NetSmarts. It's a really good resource. They've got cartoons, they've got activities. So if you've got young ones, NetSmarts is a great place, even for older ones, but NetSmarts seems like they've got some great stuff with the little characters. One of the little characters' name is Clicky. They do some cool stuff. Common Sense Media has some great stuff. Some teachers are using the curriculum on there, but they have things for parents also. Good resources, good places to look up different websites and look up different apps to see if they're safe, what their functions are, things like that. And then some additional resources other than our website at the top is listed here. And I'll just put that one back up there. But I want to ask any of you, do you have any questions? Yes.
So on my phone, if under the settings I block locations, that's not blocking the apps.
No. No, so you can block locations on your phone, but it doesn't control each individual app. They have their own settings for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
So what do you do if your child comes to you and says, so-and-so sent me a picture from something?
First, make sure that they aren't sending it out. We always tell kids, don't send it, because they think it's funny to send it. Not to send it. Also, you can take a screenshot of it. Usually, so if you report it on one of these sites, I don't think it asks you to upload the photo, because then you're distributing child pornography. So what they suggest to do is, they call it sanitizing the photo. So blurring out, if it's a naked child, blur out the private areas. And I would suggest just go to your local law enforcement, let them know about it. But online, it could be coming from anywhere. So if you're going to report it on the cyber tip line, you can send them any information you have, the screen name of the person, the website that they were using. And if it's another child from school, that's one of those things where you might want to talk to the parents about it. You could even go to the school and talk about it, or you could even contact us and we can contact the parents and talk to the parents about it. Because again, sometimes the kids don't know what they're doing. You know, but if they're receiving these things from somebody online that you don't know, that might be an adult, definitely report it online to the cyber tip line, because then it will go straight to law enforcement. And another thing, when you report on the cyber tip line and it comes to ICAP, there's no, putting it off to the side for a little while and letting the case sit there. We have to go through all the cases and we have to handle them. So it's not going to get like shoved under a pile and never addressed. It will definitely get addressed. It might take a little bit of time, but it's definitely going to be looked into and investigated.
I have a question about the TikTok app.
Sure.
I know you talked about some of the other apps like Snapchat, because that was on the news recently about how the accounts are being compromised. It's like the app was from China or something like that. And so my question is, because we made our daughter shut it down and take it off completely because it obviously scared us. So if she has that, because that's her favorite app, honestly.
Yeah, they all love it.
Yeah. And if she has that and we have it on private mode, and will that work okay where she's not going to get exploited? Or is that...
If it's set to private and she has specific friends that she shares her videos with where other people are not able to see that, that's definitely going to be a lot less risky. There are some incidences where people are able, and this is people that are very, very tech savvy that can hack cameras. I mean, we haven't had a lot of cases like that, at least from what I know. Just going over stuff and talking about people in the office. We don't see that too much, but it does happen. People can hack cameras on kids' phones and record what they're doing or just sit there and watch what they're doing. So it's just something to be mindful of, but it's one of those things where you don't know if that's going to happen unless somebody starts talking to them and mentioning it or saying something like, oh, I saw you hanging out with your friends last night or something like that. But just definitely keeping it on private is going to be the number one thing that you can do, because like I said, there's some things where we just don't know. Unfortunately, we can't know if someone's hacking into the camera, but they can't hack into the camera if they've never seen your child, if their account is private.
Right.
So definitely keep it on private.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Back there.
What is Google Slides? They can just watch movies and can they
Google
just download
Slides?
any movie?
You know what? I'm not really sure. I'd have to look into it. I can try to find out for you.
On his school Chromebook, I was watching a movie and I go, wait a minute, you're on your school Chromebook. And he goes, oh, we just go to Google Slide and we can download, and it was like a movie that you could get at Redbox.
wonder if maybe they actually opened up something else.
Oh, interesting. Okay, but then they can download.
That part I don't know about.
He was just watching like a superhero movie to get it right box. Okay.
Yeah, somebody posted it as a presentation.
Oh.
Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, actually, I'm not sure about that. I'll look into it though.
Okay, that's their version.
Okay.
Yeah, somebody posted it, the movie as a presentation.
So you do have to be a presentation.
Yeah, somebody made it.
Okay.
Also, on BitTorrent and some of the other peer-to-peer sharing networks, the software programs, a lot of kids are not really using those because it's just not that common. But the thing about that is they'll download movies, and you can't preview a piece of it before you get it. You have to wait till the full download is done to see it. And sometimes they'll think that they're, downloading Home Alone or something. Well, probably not Home Alone, but that's just for some reason that's the first movie that popped in my mind. But they'll think that they're downloading a movie, and then when they click on it, it is a movie, but it's not the movie they downloaded. And because of the fact that you can't check it first, puts them at risk of getting, something crazy. And anybody can put stuff on there. So sometimes they also mislabel it. So maybe it really is Home Alone, or maybe it really isn't Home Alone, but they'll put Home Alone on there. I know that's a stupid example for today, but they'll put something on there that will be the name of a popular movie, and then when the child opens it up, it's something completely different, something not good. So, any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank you so much. Did you have a question? No? Okay. I want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It was really nice to have so many people here and to have you all listening. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. My information is right here. If you want to snap a picture, you can email me, ask questions. I also have some little phone wallets on the counter out there on your way out. But have a great night. Thank you.